Welcome to this deep dive. And let's be honest, we're diving into some deep waters today with Despărțirea de Înger.
Oh, absolutely. Separation from the Angel is a pretty apt title for this one.
It's intense, right? Oh. This Romanian novel by Radu Lucian Alexandru. Love, loss, faith, disillusionment. He tackles it all.
And he doesn't ease you in gently either.
No kidding. I mean, that opening line, love is dead, embalmed. Talk about setting the tone.
It's like a punch to the gut, isn't it? And then he goes on about necrophilia, and you're like, okay, we're going there.
Yeah, definitely grabbed my attention. But it made me wonder, is it just romantic love he's talking about, or is it something more?
Oh, it's way bigger than just romance. This death of love, it's like this huge symbol for a spiritual crisis. Like the whole world's lost its faith.
Right. It's like those traditional sources of comfort, those gods they've up and left.
Exactly. And we're left grappling with this huge void, trying to find meaning when everything feels kind of pointless. And his language, it just amplifies that feeling.
It's so vivid, though, like those images in the opening lines, tears of oil, a crying icon without eyes. It's bleak.
Bleak but powerful. Alexandru, he's not afraid to make you uncomfortable. He wants you to feel that emptiness, that sense of something precious being lost.
I did notice, though, as the story went on, there's this shift. When he's describing love, desire, the language, it almost comes alive.
Right. Like there's this tension between the despair and this really visceral, almost desperate longing.
So the language itself, it's not just describing the story, it's part of the experience.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something you see throughout the novel. Language, meaning they're always intertwined. Even when words fail, there's still power in trying to articulate these huge, messy emotions. Like he's reminding us, hey, even in this darkness, we're still trying to connect.
And speaking of connection, his portrayal of Eros and Psyche, it's almost like he's taken this ancient myth and made it feel incredibly modern.
He has. I mean, Eros and Psyche, they're not these distant figures here. They're grappling with the same stuff we all do. Desire, doubt, the pressure to create.
And the play within a play thing. Lucian and Liliana, those actors playing Eros and Psyche. Whoa. Meta-image.
Right. It gets kind of trippy, like when Lucian, as Eros, says, we are the main roles on stage. Alexandru is messing with us, right? Making us think about the stories we tell ourselves.
And the roles we play in our own lives. Are we really in control, or are we just following a script? It's like that scene with the library, the one with the door shaped like a book.
Oh, man, that library. Pure symbolism there, right?
Total bookworm fantasy. To walk through a giant book into a world of knowledge.
It's like Alexandru saying, hey, knowledge, it's a portal, a way to see beyond our own limited perspectives. And choosing to step through that door, that's key.
You can get stuck in your own head so easily, right? This book reminds you there's always more out there, more to learn, more to question.
And it's not about ditching your own perspective. It's more like hold it lightly, be open to other views, kind of like we're doing now, right? We each bring something to this conversation.
It is a conversation, isn't it? Bouncing ideas back and forth. And speaking of back and forth, all those different voices in Psyche's head.
Oh, yeah. The internal struggle is real with her. The heart, the blood, fate. It's like all these different forces pulling her in different directions.
That's got to be relatable, right? Trying to figure out what you want, what you're supposed to do.
Totally. And Alexandru, he puts you right there in Psyche's head. You feel her doubt, her longing. It's intense.
And the way he uses language to convey that inner world. Those later poems, the words are like physical things.
It's brilliant. Like he gets that words have limits, you know. Sometimes they can't quite capture the feeling, but he still tries.
Like when he keeps using words like sting, pierced, marked. It's like love is this wound that never really heals.
Yeah, it's visceral. He wants you to feel it physically, that ache, that emptiness. Love and pain so intertwined, they're almost the same thing.
Which brings us to the ending, and honestly, I'm still processing it. It's not tied up neatly, is it? It's like he's saying, yeah, life's messy. Deal with it.
Right, and love even more so. There's this rawness to the ending of separation from the angel. Like even though Eros and Psyche are parting ways, it's not really over.
Definitely. You can just feel it, right? That their story, it just keeps echoing even after you close the book.
It's the kind of ending that stays with you, makes you think. And I think it speaks to that cyclical nature of love and loss. You know, how those experiences, they just become part of who you are.
They leave their mark. And it made me think about that image Alexandru keeps coming back to, the sliver of good.
Oh, yeah. Even in the darkness, there's that glimmer of hope.
Exactly. Like no matter how bleak things get, there's always something worth holding on to.
That tiny spark of possibility. And for everyone listening, maybe that's something to reflect on. What's your sliver of good? What keeps you going even when things are tough? It's been amazing taking this deep dive with you.
Right back at you. This novel, it's definitely given us a lot to think about. If love really is a dead god, like Alexandru suggests, then what comes next? How do we even begin to understand love and connection in the world he's created? All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're diving deep, and I mean deep, into some Romanian poetry.
You got it. We're talking excerpts from Despărțirea de Înger, Separation from the Angel,
by Radu Lucian Alexandru. And we know you're intrigued by how it tackles love, loss, all that good stuff.
Yeah, this isn't your average love poem, though. It's more like...
More like he threw all our preconceived notions about love into a blender.
Exactly. And hit pulse a few times for good measure. Seriously, though, poems, dialogues, even stage directions. Talk about layers. It's poetry, but it's also a play playing out in your head.
Right from the get-go. It's like, boom. One line reads, "In love, no one believes anymore. Embalmed, love is reduced to sex. It is just necrophilia."
Whoa. Sets the tone, right? Like love itself is on trial here.
No kidding. And you got to think, the Romanian language itself adds this whole other layer.
Absolutely. It's got this inherent melancholy, this weight, you know? Especially when you're talking about love, longing, all that. Even translated, you can just feel that somber tone.
Oh, yeah, that feeling of something lost.
Yeah.
Like a heaviness.
Totally. And the author isn't shying away from it either. It's intentional.
And then he throws in Eros, the Greek god of love, right off the bat.
Like, hey, remember this guy?
It says he gave us a command that we should live, returning scandalously from nothingness, not through the divine logos, but only through Eros. Talk about a bold statement.
Yeah.
So we're in a world ruled by Eros, but is it the kind of love we usually think about?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Like Eros and Psyche, they're here,
Yeah.
but the author's messing with their traditional roles.
Oh, absolutely. It's like he's taking this classic love story and saying, okay, but what if?
What if we flip the script? Like, even Psyche asks Eros at one point, do you trust me? Who's really in control here? It makes you think.
It's true. It's like he's deconstructing this whole idea of love.
Yeah.
It's not just Eros and Psyche. There's this underlying tension. Like you get to lines like, through the fog is the turmoil, like the forbidden fruit. And it just paints this vivid picture. What did that line make you feel when you first read it?
Oh, man. The imagery is so powerful. The fog, the turmoil, it all points to this confusion, you know? That feeling of not being able to see clearly. And then, bam, the forbidden fruit, desire, transgression. It's classic.
Makes you wonder, though, what is the forbidden fruit in this context? Is it love itself? Or something totally different?
Right. It's like he wants us to grapple with these questions. He's not giving us easy answers.
Which, honestly, is what makes Despărțirea de Înger so captivating. You can't just skim this stuff.
You got to work for it. He makes you think, which is kind of the point of good poetry, right? Those rich metaphors challenging everything we thought we knew about love. It's a wild ride.
It's like he's saying, okay, forget everything you thought you knew about love. Let's go on a journey.
And it's going to get bumpy. Exactly. And it's not always a comfortable journey either. Like, check this out. There's this part, almost like a couple arguing, where Liliana says, I'm afraid that love is just a deception, that nudity is just a reproductively useful illusion. I'm afraid of the naked body.
Yeah, that's intense. Like, she's laying her fears bare right there, vulnerable.
Totally. Afraid of getting hurt, of love being this illusion, and tying it back to the body, to intimacy. There's a lot there to unpack.
For sure. But then it gets even more interesting when Lucian responds. Because he doesn't exactly comfort her, does he?
Not in the way you'd expect. It's like he almost likes that she's afraid.
Right. He says, I like your fears. They suit you because you really are like that. A sweet, intelligent animal who hasn't yet learned to lie. It's kind of messed up, honestly, when you think about it.
It is. It's like he sees her fear as this sign that she's being authentic, but calling her a sweet, intelligent animal, I don't know, man. Compliment or just dehumanizing? It's hard to tell.
Which, again, makes you question everything. Is he being genuine or is he just as lost as she is? Ugh, so many questions.
There ain't no easy answers with this guy. Radu, the author, I mean. He wants us to sit with that discomfort, you know? Those messy emotions, no neat resolution.
And he does that not just through the dialogue, but with all this imagery. Like, there's this recurring theme of duality. Light and dark, love and law.
Hope and despair. It's woven throughout the text.
Yeah, totally. Like when he says, with a sinful breast covered by a palm, you get this sensuality, sure, but also this sense of longing, like something's hidden.
Oh, absolutely. It's like those lines where he talks about the river. The river flows under the bridge of my ephemeral life towards the waters where it will no longer be movement, time passing, but then this sense of something eternal. It's powerful stuff.
It is. And you know what's interesting? Even though he's dealing with these universal experiences, I mean, who hasn't felt love, loss, the passage of time?
It still feels so personal when you read it.
Exactly. Like he's right there with you, feeling all these things.
That's the magic of poetry, though, right? Universal truths, but through this lens of individual experience.
Yeah.
It makes it hit different.
Absolutely. And I think with Despărțirea de Înger, it's like he's inviting us to examine our OWN beliefs about all of it. Love, loss, the whole shebang.
Yeah, like maybe it's okay to not have it all figured out.
To just sit with the unknown.
Exactly. Which is kind of freeing when you think about it.
It's true. You know, we're so used to wanting answers, wanting that resolution. But maybe sometimes it's more about asking the right questions.
Totally, like embracing the mystery of it all. And this poem, it's full of these little mysteries, these lines that just stick with you.
Oh, absolutely. Speaking of which, there's that one towards the end that really got me thinking. You know the one, right? Love is not what you receive, but the gift that is given by you.
Oh man, that line is like the heart of the whole thing, you know? Makes you rethink this whole idea of love.
It does. We're always searching for it, like it's something outside of us. But he's saying it's the opposite, right?
But you put O-U-T there. It's not about finding love, it's about being loved.
Giving it away, even if it means you might get hurt.
Exactly. That vulnerability, that's where the real connection happens.
Makes you wonder. It's not just about romantic love either, right? Like, what if we thought about all our relationships that way? Friends, family.
Even strangers. Imagine if we all approached life like that. What would that even look like?
Man, so much to think about. That's the thing about Despărțirea de Înger. It sticks with you long after you've finished reading it.
It does. And honestly, this whole deep dive, Radu Lucian Alexandru, he's working on another level.
He really is. Love, loss, desire, fear. He's not afraid to go there.
And he does it with such beauty, such raw honesty.
It's been a wild ride, for sure.
No doubt.
So, to anyone listening, if you haven't experienced Despărțirea de Înger yet, go check it out.
Trust us, it's worth it.
It might just challenge everything you thought you knew about love.
And that's a good thing.
It definitely is. All right, folks, that's a wrap on another deep dive.
Until next time.
Keep those minds open and those hearts ready.
Welcome to, well, this deep dive, really digging into the mind of this Radu Lucian Alexandru. We're talking some pretty intense themes today, right? Love, loss, faith, doubt, the heavy stuff.
Yeah, and we're diving right in, and no warm-up here, straight into Separation from the Angel. You might want a notebook for this one, just saying. Alexandru, not exactly known for, straightforward prose.
That's putting it mildly, but that's why you're here, right, to help us unpack these dense layers of metaphor and allegory. So where do we even begin? What's our first landmark on this roadmap to separation from the angel?
The recurring motifs, those are key, like little breadcrumbs leading us deeper.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me a breadcrumb. What's the first one we're following?
The angel.
Yeah.
Înger in Romanian. But it's not just, a heavenly being. It's more, representing love, beauty, even spiritual guidance, all wrapped up in one.
All right, sounds pretty straightforward so far.
Well, there's a catch. Alexandru really emphasizes the duality of these angels.
Yeah.
Like, there's this one passage, the protagonist, Luciani, he says, her wings, once a source of awe, now cast shadows of doubt, a chilling reminder of promises whispered and then broken. So the angel represents comfort, sure, but also pain, both sides.
Oh, wow, that's some powerful imagery. So it's not just hope, but this constant reminder of how easily it can be shattered, which, talk about adding another layer to the already complex themes of love and faith. Okay, so we've got angels being more than they seem. What's the next motif we encounter on this journey?
Bridges. Lots of bridges. They're everywhere in separation from the angel, being crossed, built, and, importantly, collapsing.
I'm sensing a theme here already, something about fragility.
Exactly. A collapsing bridge. It's like this visual representation of breakdown, of communication, of faith, of relationships, like that scene, remember, where Lucian watches the bridge crumble into the river, separating him from Liliana. It's not subtle, but it's effective.
Right, yeah. The bridge literally mirroring the emotional distance between them. Alexander really weaves those connections masterfully. Now, something I noticed a lot of while reading these excerpts, Journeys. Characters are always on the move. What's with all the movement? What's the significance there?
It's metaphorical, isn't it? These physical journeys, they're like these metaphors for internal struggles, transformations, the outside mirroring the inside. It highlights how that search for meaning, for fulfillment, it's rarely straightforward. There are detours, dead ends, and often, a lot of pain along the way.
And just like those winding journeys, we often end up in unexpected places, changed by the experience. So we've got angels, bridges, journeys, all pointing towards the idea that nothing is quite as it appears. Which I guess brings us to our central theme here, love and loss. And man, Alexandru doesn't hold back. He throws us this line, no one believes in love anymore, it's just necrophilia. I mean, is he saying love is dead? Because that's kind of a punch to the gut.
It's a bleak statement,
Yeah.
for sure. But I don't think he's saying love itself is dead, more like the illusion of it is. It's like he wants us to confront the gap, between what we idealize love to be and what it often is in reality, that messy reality.
So less give up on love and more like check your expectations at the door because happily ever after isn't a guarantee.
Precisely. And this ties directly into his exploration of faith and doubt, too. There's a line where Lucian says, the gods are dead. Stone statues, wooden icons only perform miracles in animated dreams. It's like he's lost faith in those traditional structures of belief,
So where does that leave him? Is he saying we should just abandon faith altogether?
Not necessarily. See, he follows that up with a challenge, almost a dare. Don't hit love literally in the chest with your fist to resuscitate it. Like, maybe we're going about it all wrong. Clinging to these outdated ideals of love and faith, that's what's actually suffocating them.
So instead of trying to resurrect something that's potentially gone, maybe it's about finding a new way to connect entirely, something more authentic, more personal.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting.
And we're back. Before we went away, we were getting at this idea of finding a new way to connect with love, with faith. But where do we even begin to search for that in Alexandru's work? He's not exactly handing us a how-to guide.
True, but he does give us a pretty substantial clue, if you ask me. It all circles back to language. Notice how much he elevates its power, especially in separation from the angel.
It's not just a way to communicate, right? It's more like a force. For creation, even redemption, he seems to be arguing for that.
Right, and he doesn't just tell us, he shows us. Remember that line from Venus Poetry, I was born I, Eros, the poet. He's directly connecting language with creation, with love, even with something divine.
It's true, and if language has that much power, poetry itself, that becomes almost a sacred act in his world.
Absolutely. It's how his characters, especially Lucian, grapple with all that doubt. It's how they express longing, how they try to bridge that chasm of disillusionment.
But, and this is where it gets tricky for me, Alexandru also seems to warn against, I don't know, getting lost in words. Like there's that other line, he says, the open book is a closed door, close the book. A door will open for you to live like in books. I mean, what's he getting at there?
It's a balancing act, right?
Yeah.
Language can illuminate these deep truths, especially poetry. But it can also be a trap. You can't confuse the map with the territory. You know what I mean?
So it's like, don't just read about love and loss. Don't get lost in metaphors for life. Actually go out and live it.
Exactly. The real journey isn't on the page. It's out there. In our lives, our relationships, those messy, unscripted moments that you just can't get from words alone.
It makes you think about how easily we can get caught up in the idea of something, right? The idea of love, the idea of faith, without actually really engaging with the reality of it all.
And that's where those recurring motifs we talked about, they come full circle. The collapsing bridges, the winding journeys, they're not just there for atmosphere. They're reminding us life. It's rarely linear. It's rarely predictable. And that's where Alexandru's characters, they really come to life for me.
They do. They're not just philosophical mouthpieces, you know? They're wrestling with these huge questions in the context of their own lives, their relationships. I mean, take Lucian and Liliana, for example. Their connection, so full of longing, but also all this fear and uncertainty.
And the way Alexandru portrays that, so powerful. Think about that scene where Lucian asks Liliana, who are you? He's not just asking about her name, it's deeper. He's trying to grasp, I think, the very nature of identity in a world stripped bare of all illusion.
And her response, this poetry is bold and direct, like she's acknowledging this rawness, this power that language has to cut through all that pretense and reveal something real.
But even as they use poetry to connect, there's this vulnerability there, right? This underlying fear of being hurt. Remember what Liliana confesses. I'm afraid that love is just a deception, that nudity is nothing but a useful reproductive illusion.
Okay, ouch, that one hit close to home. But it's so relatable, isn't it? That fear we all have of being emotionally exposed, of having love reduced to something transactional, meaningless.
And where does that leave Lucian? The poet, the one who identifies so strongly with Eros, the god of love.
Totally. He's trapped, isn't he? Between yearning for this connection and being terrified of it all falling apart. Like he's both drawn to and repelled by love's intensity at the same time.
Which I think speaks to the duality of love in general. Wanting that closeness, that intimacy, but fearing it at the same time. And Alexandria, to his credit, doesn't shy away from that one bit.
He doesn't. It's messy, it's complicated, and definitely not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. So knowing all this heaviness, how do we find hope in his work? Because it's there, I think, but it's subtle.
It is subtle. And I don't think it's about finding easy answers or, those tidy resolutions that we're conditioned to want. Alexandru isn't interested in serving those up.
Yeah.
The hope, for me at least, it lies in the act of questioning itself. In those moments when his characters, and by extension us, we confront the darkness, we wrestle with doubt, and we refuse to settle for those easy answers. We keep searching.
That's a really good point. It's not about finding hope. It's about creating it. It's engaging with all of this, the love, the loss, the faith, the doubt, and finding your own meaning in it.
100%. And that's what makes his work so powerful. It puts the agency back in our hands. We're not passive. We're active participants in creating our own meaning, our own experience of love, of faith, of everything in between.
Honestly, this has been eye-opening, and yet I have this feeling like we're just scratching the surface, like there's still so much more to uncover here.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the beauty of Alexandru's work. It begs to be reread, re-examined. Each time you come back to it, you're bound to find new layers of meaning, new insights.
So where do we go from here? How do we even begin to process all of this?
That is the question, isn't it? That's where the true journey begins.
So we've been on this winding journey, haven't we? Through Alexandra's world, these collapsing bridges, questioning angels. We've grappled with some seriously big questions about love, faith, illusion, the whole shebang. But where do we even go from here? How do we take all this and, actually apply it to our own lives?
Well, it starts with those recurring motifs, right? Those images that he keeps coming back to, the bridges, the angels, they're not just literary devices. They're like tools for decoding our own experiences.
Okay, I'm following. But how does that work in practice? Give me an example.
Sure. Take the collapsing bridge. Next time you feel that breakdown in communication, whether it's with, I don't know, a partner, friend, even with yourself, think about what needs to be, reinforced.
So it's about recognizing those moments of fracture, those collapses, and instead of just accepting them, we ask ourselves, okay, what led to this? How can I actually build a stronger connection?
Exactly. And sometimes it's not even about fixing what's broken.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes letting go of a bridge that's already crumbling, that's necessary for growth. Remember, journeys are important to Alexandru, even when those journeys lead us to unexpected places.
Right, yeah. It's about embracing the unknown, even when it's uncomfortable. Even, I guess, a little bit scary. Now, what about that angel motif? How do we apply that one to our lives, beyond just appreciating it on the page?
I think that's where Alexandru really challenges us to look at our own relationship with idealization. Where are we putting these unrealistic expectations on love, on faith, even on ourselves?
It's like that line, no one believes in love anymore, it's just necrophilia. It's like he's forcing us to confront those times when we're clinging to a dead ideal instead of embracing the messier reality of how human connection actually works.
And that's where the power of language comes in, too. Alexandru's always reminding us that language, especially poetry, it's a tool for both creation and destruction.
So it's not enough to just read his work, to appreciate its beauty. We have to be willing to let those words challenge us, dismantle those preconceived notions, and then actually try to build something new in their place.
Exactly. Reading Alexandru, it shouldn't be passive. It's an invitation, an active one, to engage with life's big questions. What do you believe about love, about faith, about your place in the world? And then, the real kicker, are you brave enough to confront those beliefs, even if it means taking them apart and starting over?
It's about acknowledging the shadows, right? The doubt, the uncertainty, not as things to overcome, but as parts of the experience, parts of being human.
And it's within that space of uncertainty, of questioning, that's where we find those glimmers of hope, those moments of authentic connection to Alexandru. He reveals them, but it's subtle. You have to really look for them.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive here, what's the one thing you hope our listener takes away from exploring Alexandru's work, especially separation from the angel?
Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. That's what I'd say. Dive into those difficult questions. Embrace the messiness of love, of faith, of everything, really, and let go of the need for easy answers. Because the real reward, it's in the journey itself. It's in that continual act of questioning, seeking, discovering.
That's beautifully said. It's like Alexander's handing us this map to a hidden world, but it's up to us to actually follow the path, to get a little lost, to embrace that unknown, and then to allow ourselves to be transformed by the experience.
Right. And who knows, you might even find your own Inger along the way.
I love that. This has been incredible, really. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the world of Radu Lucian Alexandru. And remember, keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep the conversation going.